Hi, my name is Joe. I run games. And today, I'm prepping Draw Steel. I have been running Draw Steel, a Draw Steel campaign since, basically since right before they sent us the email saying don't start a Draw Steel campaign yet. And it's been going strong ever since then. So I'm going to run you through prep for the next session of my Draw Steel game, which should be a pretty big one. This game here called Tower of Time. Let's do just a little teeny bit of a refresher. The very, very high level is that I've got a bunch of characters who have been in this. They ran the original Clock Tower adventure in the very first Draw Steel packet, in which they saved the town of Hollow, I think it is. This game is set in, my gaming world, which is also the world that my novels are set in. This is the Crown's Forgotten world, which is basically just a very old setting. You don't need to know much about it except that there are lots and lots of old kingdoms that have risen and fallen and died and left behind mysterious nonsense. So what happened very recently is the PCs delved into the dungeon beneath their tower that they did not know existed prior to this, and accidentally sort of released this petulant deity called the Father that was trapped underneath it. It's a pretty small god as far as gods go, and this particular campaign setting does have a lot of gods in it. So this is like their first attempt, actually their second attempt, their second swing at it. They're going to go into his lair and attempt to defeat him. This is try number 2. The first time they encountered this god, the victory condition for that encounter was just survive. This one's different. This one is go kill an angry, petulant man-child of a god. So that's what they're going to do. And I have a version of this god on paper that I had previously designed, and it's okay. But I think now that the rules are out, now that I've got the monster book, now that we're gung-ho on this thing, I think I could probably take another swing at it and design a better god, right? That was the sluggish, sleepy, I've been trapped in a pit for a millennia god. So let's roll out the god. He has left that pit underground. He has found some followers, and he is trying to elevate them and design them in his own image. By which I mean he has completely fucked up their entire civilization. So that's what we're going to do. This is, and in case anybody's interested, this is how I arrange my notes, right? Here's all my Draw Steel stuff. It's just regular, here's some rules. Here's all the zines for Draw Steel. I got like the Blacksmiths Guild and stuff like that in here. Forged, or not Forged Steel, but what's that other thing? Got the Blacksmiths Guild and Ratcatcher Magazine. Yeah, those are really cool. Go subscribe. But in here I've got my campaigns, and this is called the Tower of Time. And I've just got all kinds of like miscellaneous notes. This was my favorite adventure here called Puddin' on the Ritz, where they fought a bunch of slime monsters. Most of the monsters from these early adventures were all like old D&D villains from old video games or from like the D&D cartoon. This was Princess Ebonmeyer and Prince Livid, who were slimes from I think the D&D video game. One of the D&D video games. And this is sort of fallout from the Lost Oubliette. So we're just going to jump in here to these sessions, and I'm going to make a copy of this most recent adventure and then just rename it with the correct date for the game, which is going to be, let's see, today is the 17th. So that means that my game will be running on the 23rd. And we'll see what's in there. All right, so it is Hamagi the still 13th, because they went in there pretty early. I like to keep the date up here just so I know how much time has passed in character. What kind of session it is. The party has already tracked the dead Zukor back to the origin point for their attacks, but fine. They are already through all this bit. and I have already run this encounter. All right. So, yeah. So from my wife, I got this idea that the Zukor were sort of like a very sexually segregated society, and only the women were priests, and they sort of led their society. And so one of the things that sort of happened here is that these basically really petulant male Zukor who like felt that they had been excluded from society were like, fine, we're going to make our own god with, hookers and blackjack. And so they did that. And the priestesses captured it and chained it up in this sort of underground facility where they did research on it and used it to fuel their magical technology and stuff like that. And that was cool for them. Not so cool for the father. And so now that he is out, he is sort of flipping that society on its heads. And the Zukor are like the only thing that remains of that society, right? They're basically like these weird dog lizard people. You can kind of substitute gnolls in there to similar effect. They're the same kind of thing. It's just that they, their civilization fell like millennia ago, so now they are basically these like mid-level monsters on the outskirts of society. My adventurers are 4th level, so they have been at this a while. They know what they're doing, and I do not have to pull punches where they are concerned. In fact, I have to push those punches pretty good, or else they're just going to wreck me. These guys are real good at running these sheets now, and they're good at what they do. So now, the father has found some Zukor, and he has taken the men and like elevated their station in their society, which is a little bit hilarious because, of course, the modern Zukor are like tribal monsters. They have a very egalitarian society, but that is clearly not good enough for this god. So he has elevated them and given them special powers, and they are oppressing the women. And some of them have escaped, and some of them are, sort of just an oppressed minority now, and I'm sure some of them are willing participants because that's how these things happen in the real world. So that's kind of where we are. To start with, now I've already used these Zukor down here, and I basically just based them off existing minions and some channelers or controllers here from the Draw Steel Monster Guide, and I've just gone in here and sort of done my own modifications to them. I don't think we need to change that, though it might be a good idea to add something new. I think at this point in the adventure, they know how to deal with these guys, but that's actually a good thing. I want to throw some foes in here that they already know how to deal with. They already know what to expect from them, so they can plan around it, because part of this is supposed to be the tactics. They don't really know what to expect from the father, except that he's big. Do I have the mini around here somewhere? Big. Like, that's part of him. And then he's kind of got these, like, flipper things that he moves around on, and I have them detached so I can move them around the battlefield, and also so that I can play with my creatures of incredible size rules that I am sort of field testing in this campaign. And the way that kind of works is a creature of this size, it'll have, for example, an attack that it makes with its claws. For example, we've got this crush attack, or we've got this tentacle grab, and if you do a certain amount of damage to the tentacles, he's only taking some of that to his body, like half of it or whatever. But if you can get rid of the tentacles, no more tentacle grab. Good for you. My guess would be they're going to attack the one remaining tentacle this guy has first. So we can probably plan on it starting there. Previously, I had this idea that he would, if you were within the first 2 squares in front of his mouth, he would just swallow you, and I still like that. But I also, now that he's a little bit more awake and a little bit more with it, I'm going to throw some forced movement onto these Zukor and onto him and make sure that I can get characters in there. I also need some thoughts on what they can do once they're in there. What is that area like? And can they hurt him from the inside? Can they get back out? They can get back out if he dies, but maybe they don't kill him. So let's think about that. This guy's got a lot of stamina, a metric ton of it, but he should have a lot of it. He's a solo, so he gets 2 turns each round. And that is just, I think, so I have 300 stamina on his body, 100 on the claws, 60 on the tentacles, 80 on the tail. I may revise that now. I'm also not, I maybe want a new mini. That's kind of a maxi if I'm being perfectly honest. But I want to maybe do a little bit of editing on that. So that is what I'm going to be doing right now, is just trying to make this guy work and maybe do a little bit of planning on what his lair is like. I'm going to find a good map and we'll go from there. All right, let's get back into this thing. So right now we are going to create version 2.0 of the Father, who is a minor god. What does minor god mean in this scenario? I don't know. This is the first one I'm making. Technically the second one I'm making, but I think we can work with this. So I am going to pull up, and honestly, I'm not 1,000% sure how much of the art from the books and stuff I can safely stream, because the art's the only thing that MCDM is really protective of. So I don't want to overstep my bounds there, so I'm shoving it off to the side here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through, this book for some level 4 or 5 solos, and we're going to template this thing off of that. So I shall pause the recording until such a time as I have found a solo that works. Okay, I'm also just reading this bit for the first time over here. Instant solo creatures. This is really cool, right? It says most leaders and elite creatures can be adapted into solo creatures on the fly with the following adjustments. And then it tells you how to do it, right? You stuff to their EV, stuff to their stamina, blah, blah, blah. That is very cool. So if I find, a leader or an elite that kind of fits the bill, in fact, I might be able to do this now. I might be able to do this real easy. Agility. Okay, so the Kingfisher worm, because if they don't can swallow, that is a level 7 solo. That is too much creature for level 4. So let's take a look at how the Kingfisher worm swallow works. A creature swallowed by the Kingfisher worm is restrained and takes a d6 acid damage at the start of every turn. If the Kingfisher worm takes 25 or more damage in a single round from swallowed creatures, they immediately regurgitate all the creatures they have swallowed. This is really cool because it means the more creatures it swallows, the more likely it is to regurgitate them. That's good design. What do I have here under the Old Father's swallow effect? Let's take a look at how this worked. So he could inhale a creature. Blah, blah, blah. The inhalation is automatic if grabbed. If not, roll agility versus might. Whatever. A creature that has been inhaled takes 3 corruption damage at the start of each turn of combat. If 100 damage is dealt to the body, an inhaled creature can be expelled. If more than one creature has been inhaled, they exit in the order in which they entered. After the first 100 damage, another creature is expelled for every 50 damage dealt to the body. So mine is way worse. So I think I'm just gonna grab the swallow from the Eric's, or not from the Eric's, from the Kingfisher worm, and we're gonna make that a part of the new Father up here, right? So that is going to be our starting point. Fine. We're gonna pause for editing. So that's a start. Now, I do like that mine did corruption damage rather than acid damage, because he is a corruption-based deity, not an acid-based deity. He doesn't have a stomach that he's digesting you in. You are in this sort of nebulous space being hounded. And in fact, I'm almost inclined to make it psychic damage. No, I like corruption. It's fine. Do we want it to be a d6 or do we just want it to be 3? Let's call it 3. Because I don't think there's nothing sloshing around in there, right? This is just automatic damage. You're in a place and you are being tainted by it. All right. So this works for me. This is a starting point. So now let's go back to the Kingfisher worm and see how you get to the point where you're swallowed in the first place. All right. So the kingfisher worm must first grab you, probably with its tongue grab. Then it spends 2 malice, and you become swallowed. That's a main action. Tongue grab is also a main action. So it's got to use 1 solo action to grab you, 1 solo action to swallow you. So that's pretty good. So here's what I'll say. Just to make this a little easier for me to read, we're going to call this swallow. We're going to say costs 2 malice. Right, and the creature grab. Grab by the father. Or swallow it. Creature grab by the father, standing one of 2 squares in front of his mouth, can be swallowed self-directly. A creature swallowed by the father is restrained and takes 3 corruption damage, blah, 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 all that stuff we just said. So either you get grabbed by a tentacle and shoved into the mouth, or you get somehow maneuvered in front of the mouth, and then he spends 2 malice and you're swallowed. Reasonable. And that's where we are. This swallow is much easier to get out of. And also, I can kind of have other stuff come up with them. That could be fun. Maybe some of this dude's horde comes up with them. Maybe the bodies of other people. Maybe if the fight is going really well for them, maybe other bodies that have been fully corrupted by whatever's going on in the stomach of the father come out, and then they have new enemies that they have to fight. So exiting the swallow condition can bring with it reinforcements. That could be really cool. We'll think about it. All right, carry on from here. Now, again, the kingfisher worm, too big a beastie. So I can't base the rest of this thing on him. So now I need to go back to looking for either solo creatures, ideally solo creatures, something that has some tentacles. I don't want to have to get too far away from where I'm starting here. And we will just start at the top of the book, start on the monsters anyway, and go from there. So a Gloom Dragon is a level 4 solo. That's pretty cool. An Ashen Hoarder is a level 4 solo, but it's more of like a brute construct thing. And a Manticore is a level 4 solo. A Manticore is pretty cool. I think this thing is closer to a Gloom Dragon than anything else. So we're going to start with the Gloom Dragon. And for starters, I'm just going to pull in everything and we're going to go from there. We are not going to keep most of this, but I might as well pull it in. This is the boring part, so I'm going to just skip it for you. So right off the bat, some of this is wrong. So I like the stamina. That's probably pretty worked out. The stability here is 2. I actually think this thing is heavier than Gloom Dragon. I'm going to boost that stability up to 3. The free strike feels good at 6. The speed does not feel good at 8. I think this is a slower moving. It's faster than it was before, but I don't think... Well, before, to be fair, I got its speed up to 10. That's because of the size. So maybe I do leave it at 8. The size, however, is not even close. Size is an 8. This thing is huge. Actually, before I had its stability at 8 as well, but I don't think I want its stability to be because, force movement is, we got a Fury on board for crying out loud. So maybe let's just call it 3. He can still shove this thing around a little and feel good about himself. Okay, so first off, before I had God immunities, and I think I still have God immunities on here, and I think all gods have Holy and Corruption 10 because that's what a god is, right? It's like it's holy stuff or it's corruption stuff, and they clash with one another. I think that's fine. I don't need to give this thing psychic immunity. It is a creature of corruption, so I could give it more corruption immunity, but I'm not going to. 10 holy and 10 corruption is a lot, and I think that's just what a god is in this setting. This thing has like fly and hover, and mine does not. Mine just moves along on the ground. I think it's like Jabba the Hutt, right? Like it's like 2005 Jabba the Hutt. Like it moves better than you think it's gonna, but still not great. It's not agile. So that's fine. So a little formatting here just to make things feel better, and we're going to go from there. All right. Carrying on, because we're still under the EV of 80, which is kind of where I want this to be at, but if this thing ends up stopping at a 72, kind of where the Gloom Dragon is, that's okay too. I don't think just adding a swallow increases the EV, because that's actions it's not doing, right? Like a Gloom Dragon can, for example, it's got all kinds of cool villain actions it can do. It's got, let's see, what does it have that is like a similar ability? Yeah, the Gloom Dragon like creates illusions of itself and messes with your vision. So this is just replacing that. So that's not doing anything to the overall. It's a villain action, not a malice action. You get what I'm going for, though. So let's bring in the things that do apply, though. I'm going to bring in the tail swing because I have both a tail and a tentacle. So I'm going to kind of import some of that stuff, and I'm going to change the names, and we'll be back once that's done. All right, so first off, I am keeping this hunger ability here. I love it. This is similar to the doleful visions that the Gloom Dragon has. So we've got 6 squares starting at the mouth, right? Ding, ding, ding. That 3 area in front, that 3 square area in front of the mouth. And that is, let's see. So I called that a 6 square, and then I called it a burst. So let's get my formatting correct here. So everything in the area that's in that 6 squares and grabbed targets. So if you're in the tentacle, you are automatically moved into the area. So if you're grabbed in a claw or a tentacle, it just brings you in, so you're affected by this. So I like that because not only is it a downside to being grabbed, and I'm spending 5 whole malice on this, but also it's cool movement, right? It's like whoosh, just pulling you in. Everything in the area is racked with hunger pangs, which eat you from the inside out. Targets roll intuition, and they are either going to take, and they're taking acid damage from their own acid. This is your stomach acid eating you, and that's either, save ends, or just a heap of acid damage. But minimum, you're taking 17 acid damage. That's a pretty good amount of acid damage. That is more damage than the Doleful Visions, although I do have less range on it. And there's a little bit more resistance on there, isn't there? No, it's the same amount of resistance on there. So is that too much damage? I don't think so. Because it's right up in this thing's face, right? And so if you're right up in its face, I think you gotta expect that something bad is going to happen to you. So let's start that there. So let's take a look at the tail swing that I have here. Now my tail swing was a triggered action. And what happens is, if this thing takes damage to the tail or the body, the tail sprouts a poisonous barb and it lashes out at the attacker. I didn't think too hard about this. I just said, go ahead and make an agility test, and then we subtract your total from 15, and that's how much poison damage you take. I don't love that. That's not a very draw steel way to think. This was literally the last thing I threw on there on the way out the door, so I'm going to change it. I still like the fact that it is a thing that happens in response to the tail or the body taking damage. I like that. But there's got to be a more draw steely way to do this, so give me a moment. Yeah, so I think as a triggered action, we do this just like the Basilisk, right? So the tail sprouts a bar of poison, lasts out of the attacker, and they just take, we'll call it 5 poison damage, and then any target who has agility less than 2 is also poisoned, save ends. Does that feel good? Means I'm never going to hit a shadow, I'm never going to hit a fury. Nobody else is going to be up on this thing's body, if I'm being perfectly honest. So it feels like a waste of an ability. How do I get around that? Is there some way to fix that? No, it's fine. We just let it go. It feels good. I like agility. I could go agility less than 3. This is a god after all. Let's check and see if any of my players have an agility that high. Because if they don't, this is the Matthew Dollar character building tool. Love this thing. It's not Forged Steel or anything, but God, these sheets are so pretty. And honestly, if he had the conditions on this front page somewhere, I would probably just use these forever. But let's see. Okay, so Baldric has an agility of 3. Durjan has an agility -1. Jacques has an agility of 3. Ubak has a 3. This is a very agile group. Srelin has a 1. Tav -1. So in this case, 3 and 2 are the same for my party, so I just leave it the same. Okay, fair enough. It's good to know. It's good to know. But it's nice to know that, like, if the non-agility characters get up there, I've got a thing I can do to them, and even if not, these people are still going to take 5 poison damage, and I think they're going to feel good about, their agility letting them get out of the way. Actually, you know what? We are going to make it 3, and I'll tell you why. Because then it's a bigger number, and I say, is your agility less than 3? And they're going to go, my agility is exactly 3, and then I'll go, curses, and they will love that. Okay, so that's fine. They're gonna love that. And then let's just double check real quick what the poison condition does, so that I'm not being too big of a dick here, but I don't think I am. Oh, that's because there is no poison condition. So I will instead apply the weakened condition, because the poison will, weaken you. Okay. So now we've got the hunger and the tail. I don't know how much I love the tentacle and the claw. I definitely don't like the names. So let's see if we can do a little bit better than that. The griffins are just called claw swipes. But this is a claw or a crush. I think I am inclined to call it Death by Flippers. He's got flippers, right? Okay, that's 2d10 plus 5. It's a signature attack. It is a melee strike. 3, and target up to 2 within 2 adjacent squares. What does that mean? It means within 3 squares of the claw, I can attack 1 or 2 adjacent targets. Because the claw is wide, and it can smash them, or it can flatten them, or it can swing, or whatever it needs to do. That does 11, 16, 19 damage. That seems reasonable. Let's go back to the Gloom Dragon, though. Because the problem is, using just the claws makes this thing feel like a bag of hit points again. So we can put it in there in case it can do it, but I don't know that I want this to be the thing that it does, right? So it does a bunch of damage, and then if it spends 2 malice, that damage becomes psychic and dazes you. And if it spends 4 malice, you take 6 psychic damage and are dazed. I like this, but I don't like it as like a primary thing it does. I do like the tentacle grab, fine, and I mean, we can base that almost exactly on the Kingfisher Worm's tongue, right? That's a tentacle grab versus a tongue grab, 2d10 plus 5, it's exactly the same. The Kingfisher Worm basically just does lots more damage. I think 468 is plenty of damage. What it does is, if you're... Oh, that's a might-based grab. I like it as a might-based grab because you can push your way out. I like that. Let's throw some might on here. So the thing is, if your might is less than 3, you are grabbed. If your might is less than 4, you are grabbed. That's going to be everybody. There's no difference between those two things. So let's pull this back to a 2 and a 3. And then on an 18, you're grabbed. Fine. This is kind of what I threw in there when I thought these guys would probably wait maybe 4 more levels, 3 more levels before they fought this thing, but they didn't, so that's fine. I like Hunger, I like the Tail Barb, I like the Tentacle Grab, fine, but I think it needs a distance effect, not just a tentacle. I think it needs something it can do from a distance to remind you that it's a god. Let's see what our options are. First off, I like the idea that this thing has an aura. Dragons have auras. A god should probably have an aura. Now, I am of the opinion that, so the way dragon auras tend to work, or the Gloom Dragon's aura works kind of like this. If you are in that area and you regain stamina, you regain less stamina. And then if you're winded and you enter the area, then you are damaged. Fine. Is that what a god does to you? I don't think so. No. Because I think what a god does to you is more like it is reminding you that you are a tiny mortal thing. And it is making you want to kneel. Do we have... Can I throw an effect on here that does that? Well, yes, as it turns out. I was just looking at conditions. So, I could give you a series of conditions. How about this? Alright, minor gods have a 2 aura effect. Any creature who is not a follower or devotee of the god in that aura automatically takes the frightened condition. A character who is winded, I don't know what Sinded is, and enters the aura or begins their turn there, also has the prone condition as they take a knee in the presence of divinity. That feels better. These are bad conditions, right? Especially if you want to move around. Yes, I like that. Some of these characters have to get close to this guy, so they're just going to have to deal. And I think it's going to be a game of like move in, move out, or move in, have somebody remove a condition from you. The Troubadour, for example, slam this thing. That should be good. I don't think that'll be too terrible. Now we need one more thing here that it can do, but I think it is here. It is going to be yeah, I like this maneuver, this squeeze maneuver. We're going to keep this one. This is just, how he can move around because he doesn't have a solid body, so that's fine. I like that he has to spend 2 malice to do it. That's okay. I'm okay with that. But I would like to give him at least 1 or 2 more things he can do with his malice. So one of them we've already talked about, right? So we will vomit allies, right? And that's going to cost 3 malice. Is that a minion? I think it's a minion. Deal. Mindless servant under the control of the father. Fine by me. I think for a cost of 5 malice, the father can just bring back any dead non-minion ally at, say, half stamina. Anything else that is worth putting in here? This is a creature of ego. It is a creature of corruption. He's kind of a whiny brat, if I'm being perfectly honest. He's a very whiny god. Yeah. I'm going to give him like a 5 weakness to psychic damage. Because the thing that whiny brats have a hard time with is cognitive dissonance. Previously, each claw or flipper had 100 hit points, 60 for a tentacle, 80 for a tail. Is that still a reasonable amount? The thing is, if I make these values too low, they're just going to go after them. And what I'm going to be left with is a god who has no arms and no tentacles and no tail, and he's just rolling around trying to crush people with his belly. That is not cool. And bear in mind that 50% of that flipper damage still goes to the body, right? So once you get rid of one of those flippers with 100 stamina, you've still done 50 stamina to the father. Yeah. And I don't think you can take the mouth off, like that he uses to swallow and stuff. I don't think that's doable. I'm a little worried about what happens if I end up with just no arms and legs. Then what do? Well, let's take a look at what I do. I have no flippers. I have no tentacles. I do, however, still have hunger. He's just got to roll around and get you in front of the mouth. I can still have allies shove you in front of him. I can still vomit allies. I can still bring allies back. So what I need out of him is just a basic psychic attack. Like just him lashing out at you with his mind, which is bigger than yours. So we're going to call that... we're going to call that Psychic Overload. Okay. That is a psionic action. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to call that psionic and ranged. When the Olithek do it, let's see. They have a psionic pulse. How does that work? That's a 10 burst away from the Olithek. It slides you around and does damage. They've got liquefy. Oh, horrifying form. Psionic ranged strike. That's a villain action. And what it does is does damage and it frightens you. So I would be okay if this did damage and dazed you. And is this a villain action? No, this can't be a villain action because this is something it's going to have to do at the end. I think this is just an action. So this is a signature ability. And we've got, we're just going to call the distance 10 ranged. Target. We'll do one creature. Basically, it's throwing a temper tantrum. So the target is overwhelmed by just the size of the mind and the rage and the impotent fury, all that stuff that makes this sort of being up. That's all. I don't need anything else. The Olithek one is cool, but I don't need that. So now we're just going to tab this in, and we're going to grab this format because I like this format, but none of these numbers. And this is a pretty big, okay, so let's take a look at some damage that other, let's take a look at the damage that some other level 4 solos do. Like here's the Ashen Hoarder. Does it have like a ranged, like a single target kind of thing? Each creature, I want something that targets like one creature. Each enemy, 2 creatures, each enemy. Self, that's not doing it for me. 2 creatures, 2 creatures. Okay, there's a triggering creature. Now, I understand why these are targeting 2 creatures, because it's a solo monster. Technically, this guy is going to have buddies, so he's not really a solo, but that one is 6, 11, and 14. I think that's just fine. So it'll do 6, psychic, 11, psychic. That was terrible. And 14 psychic. And then we give it a intuition. I guess I'm going to have to do IN so that that looks vaguely like less than. We'll just do 1, 2, 3. 1, and it'll be dazed. Less than 2, less than 3. How does that make us feel? Let's go back to this. Intuition, 1, 1, 2, -1, 2. Only one of these people has an intuition of 3, which will make him functionally immune to the day's condition here. And good, he's a conduit. He should be immune to the day's condition here. All right, awesome. So I think that is version 2.0 of the Father. He's a little bit beefier. He's a little bit different. He does some of the same stuff. They can predict him a little bit. He's more interesting. And the damage and duration on him swallowing you has been reduced by quite a lot, so that's not as miserable. Next, maps. I just made a noise so loud that it turned on my cat's toy. Pardon. If it helps, it was me clapping to make a keyframe for this video. It wasn't like a fart thing. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. This is kind of what I've got for the map. This is a Chainpiku map. Obviously, if you play role-playing games, you've heard of their maps. Their maps are awesome. My only concern with this map, and I do love the fact that there's like just random treasure around here, like this god has been sending people off, like, bring me back helmets and stuff, and they're like, why? What do you need for helmets and stuff? And he's like, fuck it, I want them. So I like that. My only real concern is that this area is not very big, and it's just got this one place in the middle that God can go. He can basically hang out in the water here and like reach out from there, but like I'm a little worried about this, and also the scale of this has me a little worried because, you know, I mean, this isn't a 10-foot ladder, right? This is less than 5 feet across, so this is pretty small. Now, what I'm doing for my game is I have those big Post-its. I'll show you. Look at this. Post-it makes these huge. What is this, like, this is a 25 by 30 inch Post-it note with 1 inch squares already on it. So like you can just draw your role-playing map right on it, which is what I did last time. And that's cool as hell. So the scale is actually not super relevant because the scale is what I say it is. So, do I like this? Do I like the idea of this place with big water in the middle? And the impression that I gave as they came in is that it's like winter outside, but the god is like churning the weather in his direction here. So as they get in here, it's warmer and it's raining. He's definitely a water-based deity. I think the Zukor people were... Here's the thing. They weren't like water-based like fish, right? They were water-based, like they came up in swamps. They probably lived in a wetter environment, but also I think of their civilization as being kind of analogous to like a 1950s, Western civilization in a lot of ways. So maybe that water level was irrelevant to them. but I like the idea that the men ran off into the swamp and found their god there. So maybe he's, maybe, and also it doesn't. I don't have to have a reason for everything. It doesn't all have to make sense. It's been a millennia or more since this happened, so it doesn't actually need to track. There can be weird quirks that are never explained. So maybe I like this. Maybe I do like this. I don't think I need to worry about his swim speed. I've already given him a pretty reasonable speed, and I'm cool with him swimming around in the water. And then maybe the PCs also kind of have to wait for him to come to them a little bit unless they want to dive into the water. That'll be a fun experience. I don't think it's going to make the encounter that much harder because I don't think he's going to be content to like hang at the bottom of this thing and wait for them. So, maybe I can sort of start it that way as an interesting introduction to the scene, and then he bursts out of the water kind of thing. So I think this is probably going to be the map. So the next thing I do is I'm going to take a look at this map, and we are going to, see if we need to make any changes to it, any notations on it, stuff like that. And here's the thing. I didn't walk you guys through how I picked the Zuka that I'm using, the Zukor technically that I'm using, because they're, the monster version, what their stats are. That doesn't matter, because you're not going to use the father in your game. You're going to use something that you made. You're welcome to use it, but you're going to use something that you made. You're gonna use different monsters. So you would just go through the monster book and be like, I like these gnolls, I like these lizard people, I like these angry anguillatls, whatever it is that you choose. And this process works the same. But it is worth noting, I'm almost done with this. Basically in like a half an hour, excluding the chit chat at the beginning of this video, basically in like a half an hour, I went from a concept to, I grabbed a monster, built a god, which is not nothing, and, it's a custom monster that is going to attack my PCs, and is it perfectly balanced? No. And that's okay. I'll fiddle with it at the table if I need to, but it's going to make for a memorable experience that they're never going to have again. Okay. Let's see what we can do with this map. All right. The map is more fun to look at, so I'm just going to leave that over there. And I'm going to make some notes over here about the, this thing's lair, right? So we do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to look through the monster book. And I'm going to see, what we're going to do is we're going to look through the monster book and I'm going to see, are there lairs in Draw Steel? And if there are lairs, how do they work? Let's find out. Well, so it seems to me that lairs are basically handled by way of Malice, and there it is, and by way of dynamic terrain. Dynamic terrain is cool. So a terrain object is a thing you throw into a Draw Steel encounter, and it might be a hazard or a trap. It might be, like quicksand or something like that. It might be a thing that modifies what's going on there. Like you might have these flammable oil containers, and if your archers get over there, then they can shoot firing arrows, something like that. What I need here is more something that is like an environmental effect. So let's see if we've got anything. So first off, there are power fixtures, like a holy idol, right? And a holy idol, at the start of each round, while the holy idol is intact, the director gains a d6 that lasts until the end of the round. And when a director-controlled creature takes damage, the director can roll the d6 to increase the damage the creature deals or reduce the damage the creature takes. That's pretty cool. A holy idol seems like the sort of thing that might exist in this lair. Maybe I could put it in the place of that treasure chest there, and it would give the PCs something to like smash if they wanted to. That's one thing. There's supernatural objects. I love the black obelisk, which is really cool. The black obelisk creates area effect magic, and there's some examples in here, but you can do just about anything. But it's basically just like every once in a while it just wob 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 and just washes magic out into the world, and your players have to smash it real good, do like 100 stamina to it. Pretty cool. Ooh, I love the idea of the throne of Aan, which is it's a big throne, and you can turn it off if you are attuned to it, and anybody can try to attune to it. So if you show up into this scene, all you got to do is go get next to the thing and try to attune yourself to the throne. You make a presence test. If you make a bad presence test, the throne sets you on fire. If you make a mediocre presence test, nothing happens. And if you do really well on your presence test, you attune to the throne, and then you can sit on it and turn it off. That's pretty cool. And while it is active, it will lash out at people with fire and stuff like that. This would be cool, but honestly, this is too small a god for that. So I think I'm going to go back to the Holy Idol, and this thing is going to have a shard of power that it has been manifesting. And what I would like that so the regular Holy Idol just gives you like a D6 that you have. It's just like floating benefits, right? Do I like that idea here? Honestly, I've got too many conditions flying around here for, I don't want to have to keep track of any more conditions. So I like the idea of a floating benefit. What I would almost like is once around, you can roll a d6. And I can use that to increase damage, decrease damage, or grant myself malice. Does that work? And then I basically keep everything else about it the same. I think at that point it's too much, though. A d6 is too much. Does d3 feel better? Yeah, d3 feels better. All right. So, first off, we are going to have a Holy Idol here. And what it does. All right. So once per round, the idol emits a field that can be tapped into by the Father and his followers. That energy can be used to add 1d3 damage dealt to a creature, to reduce by 1d3 damage dealt to an ally, or to grant the director 1 malice. So if I don't do anything else with it, I get a malice, and then I blah, 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 blah. That works. We'll just put it right there where that piece of treasure is. Sort of scattered around this area, we are going to have not only the treasure that the Father has been collecting, and probably the first real proper hoard that these people are going to encounter, because I've been sort of sparse with treasure so far because they haven't really encountered anything that like has treasure in it. So there's going to be some cool stuff there, and then also there will be the sort of rare materials that the Father has been gathering, because he's trying to get these people to like build technology for themselves, make them a technological powerhouse, so to speak, but they don't have the knowledge to do that. So, if you can imagine, you're out in the wilderness with a bunch of rhesus monkeys and you're like, no guys, I need you to bring me back some rocks and sticks so that I can make you a wheel to grind your grains. Like, how, maybe. The Father certainly does. He understands this stuff, but they don't. So they're just out grabbing him random shit, and he's just hoping that he's going to amass enough materials to like start replicating some of the technology of an earlier age. And honestly, if he'd been left alone long enough, he could have. But that's not going to happen. I like that. I feel like there should be something at the bottom of that pool. There should be something down there, shouldn't there? There should be a reward for someone who is brave enough to go down there, or possibly a danger for someone who is stupid enough to go down there, followed by a reward. Don't know what to put down there though. So this is a tier 2 party. So I think it is probably a tier 2 magic item of some sort. Let's see what kind of treasures the game has in store for me that I can bestow upon my heroes. I feel like maybe we just go straight to artifacts here, right? I mean, this is a god they're fighting. It's a big deal. So let's see if there's anything here that might work. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I might go with leveled treasure. My players have 1 leveled magic item, Yeah. So they have one leveled magic item. This is Spiker and Striker. The Tactician has this. It's super cool. And basically, and you get better at this as you level up, but what it lets you do is you take the spike and you stick it into somebody with like a free attack or whatever, and then later you come back with the hammer and you drive it into them, and it does extra damage. And then like at 5th level, you can use any attack to embed Striker to make it a little bit more versatile. And then at 9th level, if when you strike a person, when you strike the spike thing, what happens is you can immediately make a free strike versus another enemy as Spiker is driven out of them and into another bad guy. Good, love that. So we need another item like that. I don't think it's a weapon though. We've already got a weapon. Let's do something else. So the Grand Scarab is cool. It's basically medium armor that lets you fly. I like that. I've got a Void Mage in the party already, so it's not like they have trouble getting around. It would be a really fun thing to sort of tag one of them with, and flying is always like a cool thing to give a character. Almost anybody in the party could use it. It might be neat. The Karanzoi Prism Scale is cool, and there is time magic kind of involved in this here, so that's a maybe. Ooh, I don't hate Brittlebreaker. Brittlebreaker is basically a wand that you do extra psychic damage. Your magic or psionic abilities that deal rolled damage deal an extra 2 psychic damage, but it gives you damage weakness, and it gives you more bonuses if you are winded. This is kind of nice because it does sort of lend itself well to how thin-skinned this god is. So that's kind of thematically nice. Oh, but the thing I actually have to choose is the Thief of Joy. Because it gives you either envy or disdain for people around you. And then you use that envy and disdain to fuel your actions against them, and that is fucking dead on for this god. There we are. So this is probably a Torque. He was probably like planning on having them fight for it, right? To see who got the honor of being his high priest. Yeah, badass. The Torque of Joy. So if anybody, the Thief of Joy. So if anybody goes down there, they gotta go down there. So this is not a guarantee. If nobody gets even the least bit curious about what happens at the bottom of the pond, they miss out. And I am okay with that because there's still going to be plenty of cool treasure there. I'm going to give them, some money, some bibs and bobs, some ingredients that they might need to make cool magic items, and that's it. And some consumables, stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to stop the video here. What I'm going to do now is just look through here at like some of the magic items that are roughly the level that my players are at that I think they might be interested in making, and be like, what of these, item prerequisites can I put in here, right? So because almost every treasure has some sort of a almost every treasure has some sort of thing you need to make it, right? You need a steel ally, a fine cut topaz, you might need texts or lore in Celt, 1/3 of a pound of diamond dust, that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to look through here, figure out what stuff they might be interested in, what sort of second echelon trinkets, leveled armors, stuff like that. And that'll probably take me about another 20 minutes, but honestly, that's irrelevant. That's extra work. We're probably not even going to get that far. So if you were planning this adventure for your game, I just spent 30 minutes coming up with a custom god. You don't have to do that. You could have just grabbed one out of the book. Really, all I needed to do was find a monster, find some, odds and ends, some minions for it to fight with. Maybe spice it up a little, but realistically speaking, you just throw the things out there that are roughly their level. The encounter value math works very well in Draw Steel, so use it. But also, I've been doing this a while, and I know this encounter is going to be fine. This isn't the first time I've done this. So I'm good to go here. That's it. That's what it takes. I'm going to do another one of these on a first level adventure because I'm starting a new game very soon. But this is 4th level. This is the middle of the game. You know, this isn't as complicated as it gets, but it doesn't get tons more complicated than this either. I think in the first level one, I am going to pay more attention to the encounter value, so I'm going to really use the numbers, and I'm not going to, you know, go off the seat of my pants quite so much. So that might be, if you're the sort of person that really likes to play by the book, that's going to be more interesting to you. But hopefully this was helpful to somebody, and if not, it'll be cool for me to look back on several years from now and find out how stupid I was. All right. Out.